And now we return for Isaiah chapter 2. The mountain of the Lord. The word that Isaiah the son of Amos saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. It shall come to pass in the latter days that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established as the highest of the mountains, and shall be lifted up above the hills, and all the nations shall flow from it, and many people shall come and say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways, that we may walk in his paths. Now, one of the ways you could know that this is old, that this is much older than the Torah, is that it doesn't mention Abraham or Isaac. Nobody had heard those stories before about 200 BC. Nobody had heard of Adam and Eve. Nobody had heard of the Garden of Eden. Nobody had heard any of those Torah stories. Moses barely mentioned, if he's mentioned at all. The exile from Egypt, barely mentioned, if at all, by these prophets. They're not hearkening back to a mythical past. They're not even hearkening back to a folkloric past. They didn't have that anymore. They didn't have that, not anymore. They didn't have it in the 13th, 12th, 11th centuries. They didn't have it between the 11th century and the 7th century when the prophets started writing again. They didn't have it for 400 years. The wandering in the desert and the dispersal of the tribes, the diaspora of the tribes, that all happened in the fucking Bronze Age. That happened in 1177 BC, folks. Losing the tribes of Israel happened when Assyria crushed Israel and destroyed 10 of the tribes, 9 of them. Samaria was allowed to continue being the thing, as I said last video, because who gave a fuck what Samaria was doing? The Levites became nothing. They dispersed, and their tradition became sophistry, and the Ionian Greeks, the Dorics, and the Thebans. And Judah became the exile and Babylon. So everything after that is history. We know what happened. None of those people was good. Jesus wouldn't have been necessary if they'd read their own books. Do you not get that? Do you not understand that if you'd read this, you'd realize why Jesus exists, and then you'd stop reading this and you'd start reading Jesus and start listening to me? For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. The Messiah is going to come out of Jerusalem. He's going to have to come out of Judah. The time this is written, he's advocating, or the time this is written, this is still the redactor and the editor. This is many centuries later, adding on a prophecy about how there's coming a Messiah. Well, there's a Messiah coming back around to make the next chapter not hurt quite so bad. He shall judge between the nations, and shall decide disputes for many people. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. O house of Jacob, come, let us walk in the light of the Lord. This is the job of the Messiah. For you have rejected your people, the house of Jacob, because they are full of things from the east, and of fortune tellers like the Philistines, and they strike hands with the children of foreigners. Their land is filled with silver and gold, and there is no end to their treasures. When he says they strike hands with children of foreigners, what he means is they make deals with foreign peoples. And there is no end to their treasures. Their land is filled with horses, and there is no end to their chariots. Their land is filled with idols. They bow down to the work of their hands. Do you hear this? An idol isn't just a figurine that you worship like a god that you believe has a spirit in it. It's any kind of statuary. It's any kind of decoration. It's anything that you put any amount of yourself into and that other people worship as a part of you, as having come from you. That's an idol. Anything. Any and every single thing. Your PlayStation 5? Idol. Your PC? Idol. Your phone? Idol. All of it. Idols. Their land is filled with idols. They bow down to the work of their hands, to what their own fingers have made. So man is humbled. You know, it's funny because I'm certain that the last century of handicrafts just absolutely going away. I was sitting on the bus yesterday listening to women bitch about how the cost of fabrics to just make your own clothes, etc., have gone through the roof since COVID. And it's like, yeah, nobody knows how to do that shit anymore. And COVID robbed all of you bitches of life and the wealth necessary to continue doing this. What are you talking about? Has nobody been paying attention? Nobody looked around for the last 25 years. Just nobody looked around at all. What have you all been doing? What have you been looking at? What have you been reading? Why are you wasting your time with the news if you don't remember yesterday? What are you doing? So man is humbled, and each one is brought low. And my point was that I really think that somebody read this book of Isaiah, somebody read that line in Isaiah and said, oh, we're too concerned with the things that our hands make do, so we'll just make slaves make everything, and then everything's okay. If you don't know how to make anything, you can't be proud that you made anything because you don't know how to make anything. You can't sin against God if you don't know how to even feed your damn self. You don't even know how to cook. You don't even know how to warm up food. You can't sin against God that you're proud that you're a good cook, can you? It forces everything into professionalism. Not just specialization, but professionalism. You have to do everything professionally and you have to hate it. If you take pride in it, they're going to get rid of you, and they're definitely not going to pay you. They're going to make you hate it. You have to hate it. You have to hate it. Otherwise, you're sinning against God. This is so upside down, backwards, inside out, and just plain stupid that people believe this. This book is right. How dumb are you? So man is humbled, and each one is brought low. Because you can't make anything, you're just dirt. You're less than that. You're less than Adam. Do you not realize that? God damn, Less Than Adam's a good band name too. It's really a bummer that Jay had to go and get himself blocked. Do not forgive them. Enter into the rock and hide in the dust, from before the terror of the Lord and from the splendor of his majesty. The haughty looks of man shall be brought low, and the lofty pride of men shall be humbled, and the Lord alone will be exalted in that day. Yeah, the Lord alone is exalted, and professionalism is what this book is telling you, is what modern American interpretations of this book are telling you, and that's insane. That is not what he's saying to do. He's saying stop and fuse everything with your identity, idiots. Stop taking your identity from things besides your body, your mind, and your God. It's the easiest thing in the universe. I'm almost out of battery, or I'm almost out of storage space, so I gotta make this quick. For the Lord of hosts has a day against all that is proud and lofty, against all that is lifted up, and it shall be brought low, against all the cedars of Lebanon, lofty and lifted up, and against all the oaks of Bashan, against all the lofty mountains, against all the uplifted hills, against every high tower, and against every fortified wall, against all the ships of Tarshish, and against all the beautiful craft. And the haughtiness of man shall be humbled, and the lofty pride of men shall be brought low, and the Lord alone will be exalted on that day. And the idols shall utterly pass away, and people shall enter the caves of the rocks and the holes of the ground, from before the terror of the Lord and from the splendor of his majesty. When he rises to terrify the earth, in that day mankind will cast away their idols of silver and their idols of gold, which they made for themselves to worship, to the moles and to the bats, to enter the caverns of rocks and the clefts of the cliffs, from before the terror of the Lord and from the splendor of his majesty. When he rises to terrify the earth, Stop regarding man in whose nostrils is breath, for of what account is he? I told someone recently, a friend who I probably hurt his feelings, that I never want the advice of humans. I live in a tent and I've spoken with God directly for 30 years. I take my advice directly from God. What advice do you have to give me that's of any account? Every time I do what people suggest that I should do with my life turns inside out and I have to start over again. What the fuck do you know about anything?